opportunities that I've had, I've blown them. I mean, that's probably why I'm a pastor, because I blew it in every category you can imagine. I had no idea I was going to be one. But, but I thought, you know what? This is where it's at. You know what? I grew up in a godly home, and we lived in inner city over here in Akron, in Mason Park area. And one thing about that neighborhood, it was a lot of drugs. So I grew up an honor student. You know, yes, Your Honor, no, Your Honor, no contest, Your Honor. I'll get upset at my parents. I get upset at school teachers, police. Well, just every time I went off, it was a setback. But I started this business, a video business. I'd go to homes, businesses, I'd deliver videos, and I'd pick them up, bring out some more, and it was doing pretty good. I was making pretty good money, and now I'm in all these. I'm in so many drug houses. They want movies, you know. I'm bringing movies out. People I know. I got strung out pretty bad on crack cocaine, and I went through all my money, lost the business, went through a bankruptcy, went through any resources I had, I lost. You know, I was down to nothing. One time I had a dream, I had some goals, I had some vision. Now I feel like I just totally lost it. I mean, I'm just barely holding on. And here I got a 2-year-old son. When he was born, that gave me a little bit of life. You know, I was there in the delivery room. My son, I thought, man, that kept me, there's something positive in my life. I remember what my wife says, you know, you don't care about nobody. You don't care about me, your son. You know, it's a birthday. And I remember I had $40 in my pocket. And I was over there on West Market Street, over there by Highland Square. And I kept thinking, you know what? I'm gonna buy my son, I'm gonna buy him a gift. You know, and I'm at the red light. And as soon as that light turned green, I did a U-turn, going back to the dope house. And then that light turned red again. I'm sitting there like, I can't do this, man. I gotta go. You know, I was going to Toys R Us over there on Howe Road. Light turned green, did another U-turn. You know, and I did that several times. It's a miracle I didn't get pulled over, because I was really, but I mean, what was going on was, here I'm really, really struggling. I'm struggling bad. And I mean, I feel like I got men in my car wrestling with me. It's just me by myself. And so anyway, I get in the store and I buy this basketball hoop. And man, I felt like I accomplished something. You know, so I take it home, we set it up. Me and my son, Nick, 2 years old, man, we're playing basketball in the living room. And you know, I still had a drug problem. But that basketball hoop, it represented hope in my living room. And my dad called me up and invited me to this Promise Keepers event. Indianapolis, Indiana, 1995. I didn't want to be around Christians. Man, it was 65,000 men. And it was powerful. I mean, these guys were praising the Lord. I mean, it was something I come from a total dark, a very dangerous lifestyle, to now all of a sudden it's just vibrant. Pastor Tony Evans was preaching the gospel, man. And I mean, he was just preaching about the love of God, and man, he's using football illustrations, which felt like he was talking to me. You know, he started talking about drugs, but man, he was just. And he gave an invitation to people to come forward. And I stood up. I mean, I stood up so fast, I was embarrassed. You know what I mean? Like, wow, I just got caught. It felt like I got caught up in the moment. So I did what I normally do. I do everything backwards. I went to the restroom to try to play it off. And I thought, wow, man, that was serious. I go to the restroom, went in the stall, and I just fell apart. And I cried, man. You know what? I was like, God, I need a miracle. I don't even know who I am anymore. You know what I mean? And a verse came to mind that I grew up hearing was Hebrews 13:8. Jesus Christ the same yesterday, today, and forever. And to me, that verse meant he's just the same old boring thing. Jesus just the same old. But that day, that verse meant something different. You know, the same Jesus been calling you your whole life is waiting. You know what I mean? I can't even explain. This was real. God was really getting a hold of me. I prayed and I totally surrendered my life to Christ right there in the restroom. I mean, I really did. And I go back, here these guys, they're in little groups of prayer. Nobody knows what happened. I jump in a circle, and for the first time ever, I wanted to pray, you know, and I just prayed, and then, man, next thing you know, they're all over me, you know, and it felt like a weight was lifted off. I went to church for a couple weeks, and I ended up coming to Akron Bible Church, and man, I just couldn't get enough. Every time the doors were open, I was here. You know, man, Bible study, service, Wednesday night, Sunday morning, getting in discipleship. They asked me to come down to jail, you know, and man, I'm down in the jail, and there's guys, I know a bunch of guys it was beautiful, man. I was like on cloud 9. I'm at home by myself. Dope man shows up to my house, and he's waving these bag of rocks, crack cocaine. He said, man, let's get high. I said, nope, I'm done. He said, that's what you always say. And man, I'm gonna tell you, it was just like a burning in me. You know, when he said that, I just felt so powerless. Here's the one thing that almost killed me. And here it is, right here in my living room. I'm like, Lord, I did not ask him to be here. I don't want this. But I'm feeling weak. I'm feeling like I'm getting ready, you know. And I keep saying no. And he's in my kitchen. He's looking for a lighter. Next thing I know, he went out my side door. He left. And I'm gonna tell you, that day, man, that was the day where I fell on the floor. Man, I mean, I cried. I mean, I knew that day I got delivered. I knew I was delivered from drugs, alcohol, the whole lifestyle. I knew it that day. It was almost like it was put in my face, the same thing that had me. And I mean, I totally just surrendered. I mean, I was like, I didn't want some prayer of, hey, I'm going to heaven. I said, Lord, I'm going to serve you. I knew for a fact in that temptation, it wasn't my willpower. I knew I didn't have anything. Man, I know for a fact you are real. You know what I mean? God became so real that day. I come to church. This guy, Reverend Hap Neptune, 80 years old, he asked me, Brother Baker, he says, I want you to preach at the Haven of Rest. I said, preach? And I thought, what in the world? I said, this guy doesn't even know who he thinks I preach. And you know what I mean? And I said yes. It just happened. I just said yes. And it was like July. And I was gonna preach in October. So I'm sitting in church thinking, I gotta come up with a message by October. Now I'm getting tempted to leave because I'm like, you know what I mean? I don't preach. You know, I don't wanna preach. I go down there in the mission, had all these notes wrote out, you know, what I'm gonna say. I'm trying to, you know, and I'm driving around, I don't know what I'm doing. And I just ripped up the paper, threw them on the floor, you know, I just went in there. Said, Lord, I don't have a clue. I preached on the prodigal son and just kind of wrapped my testimony around it. Next thing I know, all these guys are coming forward. I'm not even giving an invitation yet, and they're coming forward and getting on their knees, and I couldn't even believe what I was seeing. You know, I've never been a part of this. So now they asked me to preach at the jail. And so I was like, Lord, God, I'm not going to ask anybody if you want me to do this, I'm just not going to say no. I'm not going to promote myself. I'm not going to ask to preach. or speak anywhere. If this is what you want me to do, I'm just not gonna say no. And from that day, that was 1996. Since that time, I mean, man, I've preached all over the world. Man, I mean, in back of a pickup truck in Nicaragua, and the cartels, prisons in India, death row, Chillicothe, and prisons, and on the streets, bars in Akron, missions, churches, I mean, everywhere. And so when I gave my life to the Lord, I felt like, you know what, there's so many people that never heard this. I've heard it my whole life, and I've taken it for granted. You know what I mean? I've rejected the Lord. But I'm gonna tell you, when I finally surrendered, I mean, that was great. But it wasn't until that temptation came in my living room. God was not only real to me, he was there. And when I talk about that basketball hoop, that represented hope. And man, I think of those 3 crosses on Calvary's Hill. 2 were thieves, but that one in the middle represented hope. You know, it was hope in the midst of thieves, hope in the midst of drugs, hope in the midst of prostitution. As long as Jesus is in the midst, there's hope. And so even as that little basketball hoop represented hope to me, I finally, my eyes were open. I seen the real hope. Is the reason I'm here now. And so I'm committed to just spending my life giving other people hope. It's the person that everybody's wrote off. They've screwed up so many times like I did, and yet they come and they surrender. So that's what I'm living for, man.